And we're live. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am your Sensei Bob, your griot, here to tell you a story, and welcome to our channel, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Bob. And today's just another one of those cartoon characters made out of Legos, little blocks of plastic. Right? And here we go, Carrot Pinhead went on the tube saying, "Hey, we're doing a great job. I'm, a stable genius, and it's all good. And I got all these guys, and don't worry about a thing, right?" Well, about a minute and a half after he finished his little dog and pony show, hey there, AI, good to see you, buddy. America had its first, what is known as communal infected citizen, meaning this person didn't come from China, right? Didn't come on an airplane, didn't come with, we knew where it came from. This person infected from somebody else, but we have no idea who it is, right? And has been bopping around for at least 14 days before he got sick, maybe 20. And was already contagious. So every time he spit or sneezed or coughed, and that aerosol went on a tabletop or a railing or whatever, and somebody rubbed their hand across it. So we're off and running. Right? And now China is a place where those folks take orders. I can just see someone trying to quarantine. Truck driver goes through a, gets stopped where they'll have people taking their temperatures, right? And they say, "Oh, you got a temperature. You're going to have to come with us. You have to be quarantined." What about my truckload? Oh, well, they'll just stand on the side of the road. Ooh, that 9mm he's got in his pants with a shotgun he's got in the back. Ooh, it's going to be fun. Just like a Lego movie, Lego movies always end up in total chaos, right? And the two who are lovers end up together, and the rainbow pony marries the pink, what are the horses with a head, little thing coming out of their head. Anyway, it's really an interesting time because I keep saying, hey, we're in a window of opportunity. And Sunday, I think it's the 1st of March. So we're going to be down to our 9th month, the countdown, right? Seems like, I had no idea what it was going to be. I just knew the time frame. So between that and last night's Democratic debate, that wasn't a debate, that was like a food fight. And I pretty much showed that every one of those morons are like, no, right? Pretty much, if Bernie becomes president, it's down to two folks, right? Bernie or actually 3 folks. Bernie, Joe, and Mini Mike, right? And I myself feel that we're going to have a wag the dog scenario with this virus. and we won't have a presidential election, right? And the other potential is if we do have an election and it's as close as it was between Carrot Boy and Lock Her Up, um, all Joe Biden had to do was not certify the election. Hey there, Janie. How you doing, baby? I'm talking about how we're living in a Lego land. Did you ever see any of the Lego movies? Right? There's always a bunch of folks who are kind of happy about just being made out of Legos, and then there's that villain, and then there is the anti-hero, the hero, the number of folk who are totally deranged, which would fit the bill for our Democratic um, folks who are running for president. Yep, Legos. Yep, we live in a Lego land, right? But by the middle of the movie, all hell breaks loose, and it's just chaos for the rest of the movie until the end, where the hero and the girl walk off into Lego sunset. Right? Everybody else, everything else, all those plastic little blocks are burning and making an acrid smell, and it's just what it is. So, and I just love the way that the majority of the people I talk to are, just want to stick their head in the sand, especially if they're in a group. If I talk to people one at a time, they will, once I kind of, loosen them up, they'll tell me how they feel, how they're scared, or how they're this or they're that. Those toys, no, but it's a real way, it's a Lego. You've never seen a Lego movie? I have a friend of mine who back before I left the Valley, he was a retired postman, and I would go to lunch with him, and then we'd go see a movie. We'd go to the mall, and we'd go to Olive Garden, and they had pretty good food. And I could take shopping bags worth of all the salad you could eat and breadsticks, and we would then go see a movie, right? And I usually let him, we'd go to the Megaplex and we'd go see the movie, whatever movie he wanted to see, right? But we'd always pick a movie that we'd have to go there after lunch, and we'd have at least somewhere between a half an hour and an hour where we'd have to sit in a theater that was lit up by bright lights, and then they show commercials for 40 minutes, and then the lights would dim and they'd show commercials for another 10 minutes. And what I would do, we'd go, we'd get our tickets, we'd walk towards the theater, and I would just take a right-hand turn and go watch 10 minutes of that movie, and then 15 minutes of that movie. Or if that movie is really good and I got it in the beginning, I watch most of it, come back and watch the movie with my lunch partner. And he would always, why do you do that? I said, why do I don't, you sit in a room that's lit up by stadium lights. Nobody's in there with you, and it smells crappy, and they're picking up garbage and bubble gum off the floor. While I am, watching, I'm getting my money's worth. I'm seeing like 8 movies before I watch the movie with you. And I couldn't do that. I said, why not? He said, well, he could never truly explain it, but I had limited resources, so if I could get 8 movies in for the price of one, and they don't care. It's not like they didn't see me going from one movie theater to the next. They don't care, because they're kids, high school kids, doing, running the place. They don't care. They're looking on their phone. And anyway, so I saw both of the Lego movies, and they're really, they're as good as any other movie you might see there, but instead of having actors and scenery, and they make it out of Legos and do stop frame animation, and then post production with computer graphics. So it's actually pretty good. The guys who write those things are really, because everything's a metaphor about what's going on in our world today, right? So the last, you know, uh, Lego movie, which was about, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, however long ago it was exactly about these group of Legos who were running for Lego president, right? And they were totally dissing each other. And they were going to be running against this character called, where do you think I got the idea of Carrot Pinhead? Because the president of that time had a really bad comb over, and he was, always talking about how he's such a stable genius. And they had these other morons running, and one was like Bernie Boo, and another was Mr. Magoo, and another was Joe Mr. Magoo, Mini Mike. I mean, it was had all the characters, and they had a plague going on, and it broke into total chaos. So if you really ever want to kind of see what's going to happen to the world we're in right now, all you got to do is go on Netflix and go watch the Lego movies. Carrot, yep, Carrot Pinhead. Come on, if that doesn't describe our present fearless leader, I don't know what does. And Mini Mike, and Monster Mike is our vice president, with the white hair. And doesn't he look like Donald Sutherland in the Hunger Games? I mean, all these movies, they're made for a reason, to get into our subconscious, and we accept the crap they put our way. No, not the old Carrot Top. No, not that guy. No, not the stand-up comedian. No, Carrot Pinhead. Like Carrot Top, Carrot Pinhead, right? And so if you want to see what's going to happen, or at least potentially, because, it's never over till the old lady sings. And so, I don't say fat lady anymore because I don't want to fat shame. So I'm old enough so I can somewhat be ageist. Protective yep, that's it. Yep. Predictive programming. Yep, that's it. Cartoons. And Janie, have you watched on Showtime? There's a show called Cartoon President. It's hilarious, right? It's the guy Stephen. What's his name? The guy who does the Tonight Show, Stephen Colbert. He was pretty righteous stand-up comedian when he did his portrayal of right-wing politicians. But he got worked for the corporate guys and was getting like $1 million a show, and he has to go along with a party line on mainstream TV, but on Showtime he can still be funny, and that is a really pretty amazing. The caricatures of, and it doesn't spare anybody. It's like South Park. South Park riffed on everybody, and to the point where if South Park didn't riff on you, then you weren't cool. And there was a point when Al Qaeda communicated to South Park that they wanted to be riffed on, and South Park said, "Listen, a guy in France who made a joke about you beheaded him. We're not going to say anything bad about you guys." And they said, and they wrote a caliphate, like a thing in the book saying, the only people who can make fun of us is South Park. I mean, this is how off the hook things are. So basically, I'm addicted to television. So I haven't really watched it since 19 '88 when I threw it out of the window. I did a performance art piece of it. And I had a like big long extension cord and an RF cord, and I did had this is when I was a filmmaker, and I had you know super fast cameras that made things slow down. Right, it's like an oxymoron. And I had it at different angles, and I threw it out, and it was at night, and I had soaked cloths and super glued on them with gasoline. So I set it on fire and threw it out, and so the TV tumbled down, and the flames everywhere, and the image was still bright, flying through the sky. And because I threw it off the top of a six-story, well, I smashed it through a window. It was an abandoned building. I threw it out the window of an abandoned building. Anyway, so I don't really watch TV because once I do, it's like I can't turn it off. But I'm taking care of this guy who's got a satellite dish. That's why I can, he's got fairly good Wi-Fi that I can talk to you guys on. And, you know, so I watch a bit of TV because it is a reflective dynamic of what's going on around us, right? And so I just try not to watch more than an hour's worth at a time, right? And I look around and I see stuff. Anyway, so because if you kind of want to get the 411 on, on what's going on, you should go look at Cliff High, I think is his name. And he is a quite, he must be a triple Virgo because he's pretty right on everything. And he wasn't, a scientist for the military. And so he's, was involved with biological warfare. So he's my little source on what's going on. And, something thoughtful or correct thinking or something anal retentive like that's the name of the show. And he's really right on. And he, like I said, he knows a lot of people in the biz and he talks to them. So, this, whenever they use the term novel, that means it's never been around ever, right? It didn't, it's not like, oh, it's kind of like the flu, or it's, that's what SARS was. It was a rhinovirus that had a few other tricks to it. And it too had telltale signs that someone had stepped on it, in a biologic engineering kind of way. And, but this novel, CV19, is really some special work. It's an RNA strand, 760 characters, and you can see where it was sliced up with CRISPR. Right? It has telltale signs. And the beginning part of the RNA is AIDS, and the end of the bookends is, the African thing that would kill you like that, right? And that was the problem of that biological weapon, was that it killed you so fast that and so thoroughly, it burnt the neighborhood out before it could spread. And in between those two bookends are 3 or 4 genetically mutated or genetically modified bat viruses. And so, that's what's so novel about it, right? So it really is engineered to kill as many people as it's a bioweapon. Bioweapons basically last 3 years before it burns out, and it's kind of designed. Nuclear weapons, cause a bad day, but you can kind of survive those. I mean, the people in Hiroshima and Nagasaki did. Those cities are very nice right now. Well, maybe not now. And The fact that that virus is popping up all over the place is, another interesting telltale sign. And, I don't know how close you guys look at things, but about a year and a half ago, there was a military bioweapons lab in Canada over on the West Coast that had sent out viruses to colleges, right? And they do that because these guys, study things. But they're supposed to be, you know, um, dead or, biologically can't reproduce, um, or just data, right? Well, this lab sent out a lot of petri dishes to a lot of universities of pretty dangerous stuff. Not only that, at that time, the technology of biological 3D printers had been created, and they sent out the software to a number of labs around the country that if the person had pushed print, because it was sent to that printer um, and over the internet, if someone had pushed print, it would have created, something virulent that would have wiped lots of people out. But luckily, none of those petri dishes broke in the mail. They sent them in the mail, and none of those software packages were printed, right? But a lot of the people who received this stuff were scared silly and called the right folks in CDC and at uh, Fort Devon, which is our military version of the CDC, and they kind of got angry at that laboratory in Canada and like wagged their finger at them. Now, this same lab sent the RNA strata, base with Ebola on this side and AIDS on that side, and the place to place CRISPRed um, viruses in between. And it seems that's what a novel CV-19 is. And so it started out in Canada. It was passed on to this lab in Hunan province. That's, again, the Chinese government military biological warfare lab. And the bat viruses they got from folks who were in Hunan, the city, and went out into the country and went into caves and grabbed bats and scraped the crap off of them. And they didn't do it in a class 9 lab. They did it, on their kitchen table. And there were pictures of them doing it, and they were like in shorts and flip flops, and no masks, no gloves, no protective gear whatsoever. And that was kind of in the neighborhood of that, um, you know, farmers market that they were selling bat cheeseburgers, right? So I don't think that meat was really the thing that got them, because it's these people have this very sophisticated RNA strand. I think it was, screwed around in that lab, and I think actually the government of China um, basically infected their people, because the real infection that they were worrying about was Hong Kong. Those 10 months of the constant kids in the street. You don't see any of those kids in Hong Kong in the street anymore. It closed that down because that was getting close, because people in China, I've seen a number of documentaries about, fishermen in China and farmers in China, factory workers in China, executives, living in Singapore, in the major cities of China. And the poor people are like robots, and their souls have been taken away. And a lot of folks have gotten very wealthy, but that's, to the 1.7 billion people in China, like maybe 0.00003% of the people are millionaires, right? Let's see. No, I avoid mainstream, too much canned laughter. Yeah. Heavenly Coffee post JFK assassination. Yeah. Yeah, well, in our country, things always sucked. Our founding fathers were real jackoffs. Corrupt. Every generation in America. Woodrow Wilson, what a piece of work that guy was. Andrew Jackson, you name it. There are a few good ones, but majority of them are just sick puppies. Jefferson, sick puppy. COVID-19. According to Atlantic Monthly, will kill us. What makes Russian Krantz discuss? Oh, email you. Okay. But, um, what the statistics look like, um, it spreads very easily, right? Way quicker, easier than the flu. But it seems to not be. I mean, we don't know all of the statistics, so we can't really tell. But just from what you can see, it seems like it's not what it really does. It disables people, and that's why I think it's a weapon, because biological weapons, not so much. They don't want so much to kill everyone. They want the enemy to be disrupted and disabled to continue fighting. So if your whole population gets really sick and you have to spend all your energy, taking care of them, well, you can't fight the war. And you don't want everybody to die, because if you had tremendous die-offs, and it's real easy to take care of them, throw them in a pit, set them on fire, right? And within the dynamic of any pestilence, doesn't kill everyone, because the bug doesn't want to kill everyone, because then it would have no home to live in, right? Just kind of wants to feed off them, right? So, and that's what biological weapons do. They don't kill everybody, It doesn't even kill a lot of people. It just disables everyone, right? And if you're in poor health, if you're really young or really old, um, you might die, right? And if you're not lucky, and if you got something wrong with you, you might die, right? But if you're in relatively good health, you'll just get the flu, right? And maybe 1% of everyone who get it, it's like a scale. People up here really bad, you wish you were dead, and then you probably do, right? People over here, they just have sniffles, but they communicate the virus to other people that make them real sick or die. And that's the other side of the coin is, if you're not feeling that bad, and you're running around coughing and sneezing on people, and you don't get really sick, and then you kind of get over it. See, the thing about this disease is that it's going to be like AIDS, meaning you'll get sick, and the majority of the people will get over it, right? But they will never get better, right? And they will have relapses, right? Again, that's another part of a biological war, a weapon. You don't kill everybody, and it's not a virus that, like, the flu virus or this virus, or the natural ones, not the ones that are novel. When it's novel or has an X in front of it, that's when it's oops. So if this virus, a majority of the who get this will have a limited immunity. Meaning you won't die, but you'll get better. You'll still feel pretty crappy, and then you'll get really sick again, and so they'll have to take care of you, and then you won't really die, and you'll be when you go through this loop, when you come down here and you start coughing again, you'll infect more people, right? And that's how biological weapons work. They can kill everybody, That's why Ebola is a terrible biological weapon, because it kills everyone immediately and very fast, right? It burns the community up, so it can't spread it, right? So, and it doesn't. This really spreads well. It's like margarine, really spreads well. Um, boop, 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 boop. Uh, yeah, it's the hidden hand, that's for sure. But the Chinese, were dumb enough, and thought, their egos were big enough to think that, oh, we can use this and it'll be for our, keep us in power. Because really, we looked at the present, China in present play. Um, you know, the Communist Party is not going to be around for very much longer. And after this thing, because what happened was they knew about this. That eye doctor who kind of stumbled onto this, he stumbled on it in October. So they had close to 25 weeks to like clamp on this down. But they actually let 5 million people to go on vacation out of Hunan. And that's why we got it all over the planet, right? And they thought they were just spreading it around their country, right? They really didn't think it was going to do what it's doing now. And, they didn't think it was going to affect their, business, the chain of spare parts to building cars and computers. And so, the stock market went down 2,000 points in 2 days, right? Now it's so pumped up. It's not. It's only 5% or 2%, but this was just when once it hit Italy, and it hit Iran, and it hit South Korea. That's when the stock market got, and then all the people like Nike and Apple basically said, well, this is going to affect our business thing. So, we can't say how much money, we're going to probably have to take a loss this year, right? And they couldn't, the thing about the market is it can take bad news or good news, but what it can't take is instability of knowing what to do. Now, this thing is so unstable, you have no idea what that, because how you will know this is a weaponized virus is most viruses, really even bad ones, burn themselves out in a short period of time. And that's what flu does. I mean, flu, and that's when you can tell about, Carrot Pinhead, hasn't a clue, because when I did this little thing, I just learned today that, every year between 29,000 and 60,000 people die of the flu. And, he's like amazed. I mean, pretty much anybody who's somewhat aware knows this, right? That's why you get your flu shot. That's why you watch, why I keep a little bottle of sanitizer in my pocket, and every time I get near someone, I kind of do this, and not only that, I've kind of jacked up my hand sanitizer by, adding, ethyl alcohol, right? So it's like super duper. So I put it in my ears, under my nose, around my lips, top of my head, my hands, and I do that maybe 10 times a day, right? When I run into people or, go out, before I make food, I do it, so. And then the other thing, the mask and the goggles, they really, unless you're wearing a space helmet, you're not cut off. What it really does, what goggles and masks do, two things. One, when you cough, you're not blowing it all over the place. But the real thing that makes you, it's not like the shit can't go through that mask. No, it can. What it does is it keeps you from picking your nose, because or rubbing your eyes. Because when you pick your nose, rub your eyes, or stick your finger in your ear, what you're doing is injecting the stuff that's on your fingers into your body. So if you don't pick your nose, don't rub your eyes, don't pick your ears, you'll be fine. And you wash your hands, really well with hot water and soap 5, 6, 10 times a day. Carry a little bottle of that sanitizer and do that 5, 6, 10 times a day. Yeah, you're cutting, the ability of that virus to get at you, by at least half, give or take, right? And if you keep yourself away, why do you think I live out in the deep green? I see no one, or very few people, right? And that's my story. So I knew this was coming. I didn't know when, but when I started doing the 15-month countdown of window of opportunity, I knew something was coming down the pike. But what if the virus is DNA targeting? Well, it's RNA strand, and what it's targeting is our mitochondria, which is even worse than DNA, right? Because mitochondria is the ever-ready battery of your cell structure. So DNA is just instructions in there, right? And so and the other thing about the DNA is if you're creating something, that's where the DNA is important. But you yourself, you're kind of, the RNA is like the RAM of your bag of water, right? A DNA is when, you're, creating something, whether that's a cancer in your body or a baby, it's DNA. Just take a bath and hand sanitizer 12 times a day. You have to take a bath, to squirt a little on your hands and rub it around. And the other side of the coin is what all of this is a few of these shows I've been talking about. If you're not ready to die, you're not ready to live, right? So this is getting everyone on that page. Everyone, we kill so many things, so many people, we are killing the planet, every day there's close to 140 species going extinct. The average, nature takes out 40 or so, give or take, but we take out about 140 every day. This is like, there is more death of species that is going on in our time than, there have been other mass extinctions, like when the asteroid hit the planet, killed everything, and other, ice ages and this and that. But this one, isn't what's really upsetting about the term global warming. That makes you think, well, it's just our cars. So we stop, that's why, oh, well, it's got electric cars. Where are you going to get the electricity from? Oh, burning coal. Yeah. So that is just another distraction, just like our present presidential or all planetary politics are distractions. They're just like watching Jeopardy or, dialing for dollars or Family Feud. I mean, it's just all it is. It's all the above, right? The only true essence of humanity is our individual life experience in our avatar, in the linear sandbox of illusion, that it gives us the ability to exercise our free will to choose to ascend into love's co-creation. Now, this world ain't going to end. If things here go the worst, way, which I don't think it will, but it could. And, Carrot Head's oh, that's not so bad. We're doing a great job. It's all going to be good. Well, I would say I would give a 50-50 on that one, right? And as far as the boys in Las Vegas would go, that's pretty good standing. If you can go flip a coin on it. It's like when General Groves, I think I say, who was the military head of the Manhattan Project, and Dr. Oppenheimer was head of the scientists. Once they built the gadget and they were going to test it at Trinity, right? They were going to test the plutonium device because that was the easy one. All you needed was a reactor, and they had a bunch of them at Hanford, and the byproducts was plutonium, and it was byproduct of the reactor, and to get yourself a solid chunk of plutonium. Yeah, it cost $1 billion to make one softball size of plutonium, right? And all they did to make it blow up was to surround it by just explosives and have them all go off at the same time, where it squeezed, didn't blow the chunk of plutonium up, it squeezed it, right? It had lenses to focus the explosion to squeeze that plutonium and squeeze it so much and went to critical and ba-boom. So that was the bomb they tested at Trinity, right? And so when they got the chunk of plutonium delivered to Los Alamos, where they were making the gadgets, they, the UPS truck pulled up and, gave Groves a lead box and said, "Here, sign this." And Groves signs, and it said that that softball chunk of plutonium was worth $1 billion. And Groves was going, "Fuck, man, if this doesn't work, I'm going to be cleaning toilets, for the rest of my military career." So he goes to Enrico Fermi and says, "Okay, Fermi, I need to," and why they really built the atomic bomb. Yeah, they thought maybe the Germans were building one because all the smart nuclear physicists were still in freaking Germany. The guys who made it out were like their students, right? So that was one. But two was, once we started bombing Germany, the first time we started doing daylight bombing with B-17s into Germany, into France, but into strategic sites, we were losing 1,000 planes a day. And there were 10 guys at each one of those. So they were losing like 10,000 guys a day, and those planes were, $30,000 a pop. So, and they weren't even hitting the target. So that was one of the main reasons, because they had one airplane that could just drop one bomb that could take out a city. It was economically feasible. So Groves asked Fermi, who was the smartest one, he was the guy who nearly blew up Chicago by building a crass nuclear reactor in a squash court in Chicago University. Had enough physical material. If that sucker had enough uranium there that it had gone critical, would have taken out Chicago easy, and surrounding neighborhoods, So probably would have killed, a million people. And they blithely did it, like I said, in a, frigging, the University of, the main Chicago college in a squash court, Hey, go ahead and do that. So Fermi did that. And so what Groves wanted to know, how many bombers that one bomb was going to be equal to. So Enrico got on his little blackboard and started scribbling, and had his assistants with their slide rules computating. And then he went to Groves, "Hey, I need about 20 tons of dynamite." And Groves said, "What?" He said, "Well, I got to blow it up out in the thing, and because it's going to be my model for it." I said, "Okay, whatever, sure." So they blew up, right? And he used that as his mathematical model to figure out, um, the explosive value of this bomb. And he came back to Gross and said, listen, we can't blow this thing up. And Gross said, what? He said, we've already spent like $3 billion. And, no. We got to take this. We're almost there. It's almost the end of the war. We got to, they're breathing down my necks to get this thing working. And so, and he goes, so why can't we blow it up? And he goes, well, in my effort to figure out how much explosive quality each of these bombs has, I realized that it has enough to cause a chain reaction in the atmosphere and incinerate the whole planet. And Grove goes, so what's the chances of this happening? And Enrico Fermi said 50-50. And Grove said, so how solid are you on that one? And he goes, I'm really solid, 100%, right? 100%, that 50-50, And so Groves takes a silver dollar out of his pocket and he says, well, flip for it. And Enrico Fermi's like, and he flips it and he goes, Enrico, call it. And Enrico's still like, and so Groves says, I'll call it heads, right? Boom. Oh, look, Enrico, heads. Okay, boys, blow it up. Ba-boom, right? So they blow it up, and everyone's totally freaked out when they do the Trinity explosion because it's like, 50 times bigger than where that little blockhouse was. Everybody who was out in the parking lot got blown across the parking lot and got a suntan like you couldn't believe. So anyway, that's when Enrico said, listen, that's it. That was the only one we could do because it's 50-50. The next time we will ignite the atmosphere. And Grove said, nah. And by that time, they took it they didn't need the scientists anymore. They had it, right? And the Nazis had delivered them some atomic bombs in a submarine. Go read Joseph P. Farrell's first 2 or 3 books. It goes on about that the Nazis had the atomic bomb, and that's how they killed 60 million Russians. Because they killed 60 million Russians in 2.5 years. That's a lot of killing. So, to do that much killing, you'd have to have like a nuclear weapon. So, look at what, we caused in Syria. We obliterated that country over the last, since 2000. That war started, I think, in 2011, and the Arab Spring. And, so we've killed, that war's killed maybe 300,000 people and have dispersed probably 8 million people out of Syria. But, the Germans killed 60 million Russians, right? In 2 or 3 years, right? So, so they, the bomb that they put, the little boy bomb that they dropped on Hiroshima was a German bomb. They, when they got it out of the submarine, it was black with, white swastikas on it, and they just spray painted it gray. So, and Joseph P. Farrell is very good. He's a great scholar in this period. If you watch him on Dark Journalism, his interviews are really amazing. He really goes on about the causes of JFK's assassination, and he takes Robert Dolan's thesis of the breakaway civilization and really puts meat on the bones of that. And Catherine Austin Fitts does a very good job showing where the money came from. And seeing where the money came from, you just follow the money, you can see who's doing what. So what we are right now seeing the end of the cartoon show. Like I said, we all live in a Lego So, buddy, have you ever seen the Lego movies? If your immune system is good and loaded with, yeah, B6, B12, and, things like birch bark and what there's a couple of mushrooms that are good against this. Yeah, you'll be in good shape. And so my immune system, yeah, I'm like got lots of issues with you know, diabetes and neuropathy and charcoal legs and things like that. And the interesting thing about that actually has built up my immune system, right? So, uh, but the thing that really does a great job on your immune system is meditation and visualization. So if you're there, like today, I was cleaning up my campsite because it's going to get warm soon, and as soon as it gets warm enough, I will move out of my two neighbors' houses because they've gotten over the things I was taking care of them. They both had heart disease, and one had open heart surgery, and the other just needed to eat a better diet. So yes, aren't they? Like the last one is exactly what's going on here because they had these total hair on fire pinhead politicians that look just. Buddy, I don't know if you watch American, but last night's debate, if you were on acid, you were, I was slapping my leg because these guys were like unfreaking believable. Like it was like a Lego movie. It was unbelievable, right? And then when Carrot Head came out and his little he did at 6 p.m. here. He did a speech to the American people. Hey, we're doing a great job. I'm a stable genius. I got all these really smart people. Everything's fine. We only got 5, 6 people. It doesn't matter. Because CDC basically why the stock market hit the skids, and he had to do this. He was in India sucking the bud of Modi. They were having 40 people have been burned to death in the riots that were against Modi and Donnie, and they didn't even see it. And so someone asked him, so what's going on with this virus thing? He said, not to worry. We don't eat bats in our country, and no one's sick in our. We've got it covered, right? Well, not really. But everyone in Europe said the same thing until like 40 people just popped up out of nowhere in Italy, right? And the same with you know South Korea, and pretty much every country in Europe has what is known as a public, meaning someone who is from this town here, right, gets the novel CV-19, right? And they weren't in China, and they didn't, go to the airport, and they didn't, you know, come in contact with any Chinese people or any other people that they knew of who went to China. But what happened was somebody did come from China and went to some place like, in Taiwan, and then somebody in Taiwan, rubbed their hand against a banister and got on another airplane and went to, Russia, and then those guys coughed in someone's face at the airport, and those people got on an airplane and came to Rome, and then those guys got on a bus and came to this coffee shop in this city, and you know spat on the table and then rubbed it with their sleeve, and then somebody came in and had a cup of coffee, and they're the one who got sick. Now, all those other people didn't get sick yet, or have the virus in them and don't even know it, and spreading it all over the place. So that's local exposure. And so if it can happen like that, and then the one that happened in South Korea, that's this very secretive cult kind of religion, and and they had these mega churches that have 20, 30,000 people in them, and they got like 250,000 members. They're very secretive. They don't keep a list. They don't tell anybody who's part of this church. And this one church in Korea, um, a couple hundred of those people got sick. Now they all go to each other's churches, and they have part of they are a messianic Christian church that believes in end times. Now they hear about this thing going on in China, and so they send a few of their folks who want to sacrifice themselves, and go find someone who's sick and let them get coughed on, and they get on the airplane. In those days before China locked everything down, and came to Korea, and then went to a couple of their churches and coughed on everybody. You can just imagine how many of those folks. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but don't believe a word this boy is saying, But it seems like that could have been, because I saw some pictures of those people and their churches. It's like, oh. And I read a little of their belief structure. It's like, that's why I don't believe in anything. Because when people believe in stuff, that's the kind of stuff they do. Right? I stopped believing in stuff when my first wife, she had spent a lot of time in San Francisco. And so I got this gig to make the Xenon work, and it was, run by these mobsters. And, they like Bugsy Siegel. They had spent a lot of money to build this thing, and nothing worked, and they had to get it done by everything had to work, or these guys, right, they'd be in the river with cement shoes. So, somebody got a hold of me and said, hey, I want you to meet some guys. I met the Tony Two Toes and Bobby Bentnose. Bobby Bentnose, when he was youngster, was in every fight he could get in. He never won one, but he broke his nose, right? Tony Two Toes shot 2 of his toes off when he was cleaning his gun, right? These guys were not, but they were connected. They were made men, so they had access to cash. So they wanted to build Xenons. So they backed some, players in the disco world. It's like Rebel and the other pinhead who did 54. It wasn't their money. It wasn't their club. It was some mobster. They were just the front guys. The same thing with Xenon. So anyway, I see these guys, and the contractor, who was their guy, who had been on the job from the beginning, and they had all these subs that just screwed up. And so anyway, I walked around, and discos are blinking lights, right, and loud music, right, and they couldn't make anything work, right, but they had everything there. They had blueprints, they had circuit diagrams, they had the hardware, they had the lights, they had everything, and basically, I looked at the blueprints. I walked around with a flashlight, and my little, I had this great little device that I could buzz circuits out, right? And so all the pipe, all the boxes, all the everything, the wire was pulled, all the, the service was done well, all the sub panels were good, but from that point on, nothing worked, right? And this was done in the years of when Spielberg did Close Encounters. So they had a gigantic flying saucer. This was a major thing, like a 20-ton flying saucer in the middle that would go up and down. And when it came down, it would shoot out dry ice and blinking lights. It looked like a flying saucer, right? And so nothing worked. And so the guy said, it has to work in a month. You have a month, and you will only work on this. I said, well, okay, yeah, I've got nothing else to do. And they said, you don't understand. You're not, once you agree, you shake my hand, I will give you whatever you need and whatever money you want on completion. Just make it work by this date. It has to work by this date. And so I said, okay. And so I basically, my wife, who we had just come back from Europe, and I really had no other, we just got back, had an amazing thing, got married, And we went back to my loft, and she was so. I started working on it, and I basically said, "Honey, I'm working on this disco, and my employers, I cannot leave the building until it works, right?" She goes, "Well, what am I going to do?" I said, "Well, it's New York. It's I can find you a job. You can do all the photoing and working in your dark rooms." She goes, "No, I miss San Francisco. Can you give me some money and send me back to San Francisco?" And I said, "Sure. I'll put you on an airplane, give you some money, and you have to take the dog." And she goes, "Okay." So, Tony gives her a chunk of cash. We put her on the airplane with the dog and send her to San Francisco, where she hooks up with her best friend, Yvonne. And Yvonne looks just like Donna. And our friend in Australia, who we would go see in about a year and a half, his girlfriend was Leslie. And the three were exact same height, same build. All three had red hair, and they were cancers born on the same day, minutes apart. They were like astrological. When those three girls got together, they could change the gravitational field of the planet. At least the girls were. Anyway, so, and all three of them were triple um, cancers. It was like unbelievable, these girls. But anyway, put them on the airplane, right? And, I make it work, the big opening, right? And everything kind of worked. But all of their bosses, the Godfathers who gave them the millions of dollars to do this, so they had big opening. Naked girls, covered in gold, bent over like tables, and they were eating sushi off them, and I mean, it was beyond decadence. And I was on the roof because that's where the controller of the flying saucer was, right? And so I got a bunch of my young men and women that I had trained to be electricians that I had grabbed off the street, and had them buzz all the wires out and tag everything, and put forks so they could be stuck onto buses of connectors, you know termination points of the controllers. And by doing that, it definitely made it so the right wire went to the right terminal, right? And it took us a good 2 weeks just to buzz the wires out and put these little markers on it. And then I was constantly had myself I got myself a big architect's table with lamps, and I'm making lists and lists and lists of terminations, and then had those guys and gals terminating, right? And 20 of them, one of me. We got it done in a month, and everything kind of worked. Everything blinked. The sound was great. Everything, all the lighting was amazing. It had my little perfect touch of theatrical lighting look, and I did the most with the least, right? I didn't make sure, not everything worked 100%, but mostly 50%, everything worked about 70%. So it looked great, right? No one knew, no one knows how those things work. So the opening, I had those guys and gals everywhere, like pushing this and doing that. And most of the controllers were put in this little metal tin box on top of the roof. And I was up there, and I was wearing a silk kimono, and I was wearing wooden Japanese shoes, and I had two girls in, almost nothing, um, helping me. And they were titty dancers. Tony had a lot of titty bars in New York, and he had about 20 of those girls, being lampshades and tables and my assistants. And they had these big paper umbrellas, right? And I was out on the roof, and I had all these wedges of wood, and I had a wooden mallet, and I was putting the wedges into relays and whacking them in there, so the relay would clip and the flying saucer would go down, and I'd pull them out and I'd stay there, and when it had to go up, and I had a little headphone, a little radio, and a guy who's pushing all the buttons. All this stuff was supposed to be automatic, right? Well, it took once the major big opening, the date, when everything had to work, and all the Godfathers came and saw it. And the most amazing moment of that was I'm doing this, and it was like I was like Frankenstein, right? But I was wearing a silk kimono with wooden shoes, and I had really long hair, and I had a big blunt hanging out of my mouth, and a wooden hammer, and I'm smashing these things, and and I turn around, and there's 6 of these old Godfathers in their suits, Tony Two Toes and Bobby Bentnose with girls on their arm, and everyone was like looking at me like, you know. And this one guy goes, "Does he have to do it every night?" And I turned around, no, 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 no. This is just for to make sure that everything works for the big opening. No, everything will be automatic. And when I meant automatic, I wired it so the guy at the turntable, right, the guy who's the DJ, he had like 6 buttons, and he could push whichever one he wanted, and a different set of effects would occur, right? And so that took me about a month of never leaving that place, and how I met Neil, my friend in Australia. So at a certain point, about after a week, I said, "Listen, Tony, this is like, I have to see sunlight at least once a day because it's skitzing out my internal clock. So no problem. I'll come at 6, get you for breakfast, and we'll go to 8th Avenue." And right next to Port Authority bus terminal, there's a bunch of these fruit stands. I don't know if they're there now, but back in the day they were. And what they were you walk past the fruit stands into the back, and it was like a gangster Walmart. So everything you wanted a gun, you wanted a meal, you want booze, you want drugs, you want a little boy, you want girls, whatever you wanted, and you were a made man, you go there and get whatever you want, right? It's like that scene out of Wise Guys when the guy who's telling the story brings his Jewish girlfriend to one of these places, and Tony Bennett singing, right, and comes in through the kitchen, and he, the big line of all the dudes are there, and he just walks out, and they pick up a table and they stick it right in front of Tony Bennett, and put a tablecloth on, and the light, and salt shakers, and a basket of really good bread, and this cooler of $1,000 bottle of wine shows up, and Henry is just handing out Benjamins left and right. So that's the kind of place this was, and we would go have breakfast there. We would have eggs Benedict on lobster tails, and a beautiful petite little steak, a couple, however many you wanted, and every other kind of noshy thing you could think of for breakfast, and really great cappuccino and mimosas, and we'd be smoking blunts, which are cigars with lamb's breath, the little hairs off the female buds of marijuana plants. And Tony had so much, he would smoke those things on the street, and no cops everyone knew who this guy was, and no cop would even dare. And that's why Tony would just smoke them, and where he had carte blanche to do whatever he wanted, right? He made Carrot Boy look like a Chinese food delivery guy. So anyway, one of these mornings, I think it was a Sunday morning, we're walking back. There's no one around. Times Square, because Xenon's is just off of Times Square, and we're walking there, and Times Square is really like 3 blocks, and it's like Broadway is going this way and Fifth Avenue is going that way, or 7th Avenue. One of these 2 major avenues cross each other, and that's the square, when these 2 roads cross. And right in the middle, there's this little teeny park, with a statue of George M. Cohan, and there's like a metal wrought iron fence around it and benches against it. So, you can sit there and cars would go whizzing by you. But it's Sunday and there's no traffic whatsoever. And as we're walking up, we see this crazy guy and George M has got his arms up like this, raised to the gods of Broadway. And my friend, who would become my friend, this crazy guy, is screaming, "Bah, bah," and he is in the arms of George M. Cohan, and he's semi-naked, and and he's really crazed, right? And so um, we kind of go up to him, and Tony is speaking in the same tongue, and I go, "Hey, what are you doing up there?" He says, "I'm looking for the YMCA," and he was right in front of the YMCA, but from his vantage point, he couldn't see the big letters YMCA. So I said, "Come on, you better get out of there, because if you fall, you're gonna, get staked by this fence, because it was wrought iron picket fence." So we got him down, and I said, "Why don't you come with us?" So because Tony really, I don't know, these two guys, this crazy Australian artist guy and Tony, kind of bonded because they just were like coming from the same place. And so and that was very good because Neil occupied Tony to the point that he kept Tony out of my hair, right? And so I got the job done. One of the reasons I got it done on time was that Neil was there distracting the mobsters, right? And so Neil and I became, because once he got in there, he couldn't leave until Anyway, so we had this. They had this great green room, which was like a suite, right? Had jacuzzi and really nice kitchen and room, kind of rooms off the side with beds, right? Very nice beds, and it was really good. So we got the job done. We um, you know got had this great party that lasted a week, and then it was time to go. And I got on my friend Lester, who had the World Community Consciousness Church, um, had this thing called the Gray Rabbit. And he, earlier on in the 60s, he had taken the Magic Bus, which went from London to Istanbul, right? It was the hashish bus, right? So Lester did the same thing, right? And he started a religion, and then he was a total motorhead from Maine, so he got all these Cincinnati, um, transit buses, took out the seats, put one big plywood platform, put big foams on there. It was a rolling orgy, and in the bottom of the bus, he where people normally would put suitcases, he had it stuffed with bales of marijuana, and he had buildings. How I know him is that he had a building right next to where I was living on Duane Park, and he had his diesels there, and he nearly smoked me out one night. The wind changed and came into my loft, and I woke up like hallucinating and went down and screamed at him, "Oh, I didn't even know you were there," because no one else lived down in Duane Park. I was living in a refrigerator, a really big one, 2,000 square feet. It was a hotel bar and butter refrigerator. Anyway, so Lester said, "Okay, okay," and he walked me into this like large room, 1,000 square feet. It was stacked up with bales up to the ceiling. He goes, "You want one of those?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I took one of those, and it took me a year to get through that. And he said, "Listen, I have a bus line, and it'll take you anywhere, and you can go anywhere, anytime. Just come into the office here and see where the buses are going. You can jump on. Just because you didn't call the police. You didn't. Once I explained it to you and you explained it to me, we dealt like grown ups, and I like you. You're kind of fun, right?" And he was a good 20 years older than me, and he had gone through the Korean War, and so he was just having a good time making money. And so years before, this other part of the story was I traveled everywhere with Lester, and that's for another night. Those stories, travels with Lester, right? And the World Community Consciousness Church, right? So he started a church. And so everything was tax free. And when he was driving around with these rolling orgies and he would get stuck, and he side the bus, the World Community Consciousness Church, and cops would stop him, he would slap, take the Grateful Dead out of the 8-track and slap in, praise God music. And he'd have everyone sing along. And the cops would come on and kind of look around and see crosses everywhere and everyone praising Jesus. Okay, you can go. And so that was, and that worked for him for God knows how long. So if you were to Google the Gray Rabbit and or the World Community Consciousness Church, you might find little strands of Lester's goings on. So he had buildings everywhere. So anyway, so we left New York. And when I left New York, I left with a very large paper bag filled with my payment. And Bobby gave me a Thermador, a leather Thermador with 20 really exquisite spliffs. And I was still wearing my silk kimono, nothing underneath, and my wooden shoes. And Bobby had got me a nice little satchel of clothes from his closet, right? Mobster looking clothes. And so I had them nicely folded in this other bag. And Neil and I got on the bus. And it was him and me, one of the driver, and they had two drivers. And there were 20, secret, what is it? Valerie's Secrets? No. Whose Secret? The underwear, they were underwear models, right? 6'2", amazingly. And Neil was the biggest, whore I'd ever seen. Yeah, he could not sleep with whatever woman that was right in front of him. I don't know how he did it, but so he slept with all those girls, and I was married, and I said, "Sorry, girls, I'm married and I'm monogamous, and they like fell in love with me and had sex nonstop with Neil, right? And so we were somewhere in the middle of the desert, New Mexico, heading towards California, and my wife Donna, who had been there now for a month with my dog, and we were baked, and because there's whatever he wanted to smoke, and the girls had every other kind of drug. There's something about models that they really run on, barbiturates, and you name it. They had every pill there was, along with a number of psychotropic substances. And and most of those girls were pretty smart. So they liked, I would be up reading a book, and then they would come, oh, I read that book. And we would talk for hours on the road about philosophic things, and they would just say, you're such a, someday I'll find a man like you. It'd be nice if I could find, a few of those girls, granddaughters. But anyway, because they'd probably be in their 20s by now. But anyway, we had a very interesting thing. And so we're in, coming out of Albuquerque, heading towards LA. And it's just me and Neil, and we're watching the sun. It's like we were running away from the sun. The sun was behind us rising, and we were running away from it. So the shadow was, we were running into the shadows. And Neil was crying. I said, Neil, what's wrong, buddy? And he said, I'm so happy. It's the happiest I've ever been. And it was one of these moments like I had today. It was this quintessential feeling of peace and just at one with you are in the place you're supposed to be. And he goes, you're my best friend. I said, how can I be your best friend? I've only known you about a month. He goes, no, you don't understand. I mean, why I got along with those mobsters so well is that in Australia, where I come from, I have that same attitude. I don't give a fuck about anybody except me, and I play everyone. And yeah, I'm charming and sweet, and I'm young. I'm a lot younger than most guys, so I look pretty good. And I have this, charisma with women, and so guys see me always with a girl on my arm, and so did those monsters. They all had girls on their arm, but they, have a gun too. And anyway, he says, "You're the only guy who's only cared about me. You you were trying to make the pyramids. You had a date, and if it didn't go right, it might not go too well for you. And yet the whole time you were there, you were always thinking about how I was doing and what my needs were, and that's a real sign of a good friend." And he said, "Listen, I'm never ever." He said, I can't be as good as you, but I can always promise to, we have this ability to communicate, and that's why the other reason why you're my best friend. I've never told anyone my feelings the way I told you, not even women, right? And I'll never lie to you. I'll never cheat you, and I'll never ever sleep because he would take other. I saw him just take women away from guys who were like, "Well, that's my wife," and I said, "I'll never do that to you. I'll never sleep with any of the women in your life, and I'll always be like this with you, straight up and not in front of other people, but and I'll always have your back the way you have my back." Now that's a really good friend. So I've known him. That was 1977, right? So I've known him since then. And I was, living in Australia when they had martial law, and he was like enemy of the state. It was pretty weird to be because he was a political cartoonist, right? And so, anyway, that's a whole nother story. So, when we get to, um, you know, San Francisco, there's Donna waiting for me with my dog, and her 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 best friend Yvonne, who was English, and Neil was English, but went to Australia at 7 because his dad was a rocket scientist and worked at Alice Springs. So Neil, it's like me. He was always around these wicked, strange scientist technologies that were like 1,000 years, and he saw it all as a kid. He too saw a nuclear explosion when he was like 6. His dad, he took him out into the desert and said, "Neil, watch this." So. Um, he and I had this, very simpatico thing about being in the right place, at the right time, and seeing really weird stuff and not being owned by it, just experiencing it, right? And so, and we also had this sense of realizing that everything that we were told was a lie. That's why he was a political cartoonist, because he was expressing that in a big way. And so, because in Australia, man, those guys were such crooks. It's like right now in America. It's like up until, JFK got shot, it was pretty easy to pretend that, oh, we're great. Oh, we're the best. Oh, home of the beautiful and the brave. And so, and Jane is right. She goes, she's talking about, back in the conversation when we were talking about viruses. She goes, I meant targeting certain genotypes. And it seems like, the novel CV-19 pretty much is, looking to kill, Oriental folk. So, uh, oh, the dogs are going crazy. Anyway, what time is it? It's only 10:40. I never locked this place up because if anybody who shouldn't be in here were to come in this house, those dogs would eat them. I mean, they're as big as lions. Well, two of them are. The other two are like little pit bulls, but man, they are like pits. I mean, they are like bulls. Like once they get their teeth into something, they can't get it away from them. And they're very skittishy. I mean, these dogs love me. They sleep with me. Um, but sometimes, they come like at me. Like, what are you looking at? No, oh, sorry, didn't mean it. Anyway, so this is a long way around of a story to tell you about religions, right? So so Neil and I are buds, solid buds, and I have about 10 friends that I've known 50 years or more, and I have that same kind of. I mean, I love Neil, I love him, and if he was, a female, I'd have sex with him, but it's a guy, I'm not too interested. But anyway, so we get off in San Francisco, and there we are. And so he sees Donna, and I've shown him a picture of Donna, and he's like, oh, Donna, oh. And I've told her all about him, and they are really just hit it off sweet. And because he doesn't have the energy, like, I'm not going to sleep with you. But then he looks at Yvonne and goes, ooh, I'm going to sleep with you. And so, Donna, she's driving the car. I'm sitting in the front seat. Yvonne and Neil are in the back, and already feeling each other up. But she's got a boyfriend, and her boyfriend. So we saw up in the house, and her boyfriend is a Filipino albino flamenco musician. Right? He's got like this 98 string guitar, and we're going to go to dinner at this flamenco restaurant bar, and Tony's going to play flamenco music while we have a mega meat meal. These guys are Argentinian. So, we get there. I take a shower with my sweetie, and my dog is like, because Duca was like a crazed dog, one of my crazed dogs. And so, I keep, coming out into the kitchen, and Tony's upstairs, maniacally tuning his guitar for the gig tonight. And those two were like basically having sex on the kitchen table while Tony's upstairs, and Don and I are in the shower. Anyway, so I keep coming out, just shaking my head, and they're giggling. And so anyway, we're gonna have some coffee and boo, and so Tony comes because Tony controls the boo. So it's around 4:00. He knows it's coffee time, and she makes some great little crumpets and coffee, and we have boo, crumpets, and coffee. And Neil excuses himself, and he goes upstairs and slightly detunes the car and the guitar, and puts it back in its case and comes down, right? And so we go off to the gig, and we leave Duca in the house, right? And they have a dog that is a Doberman Pinscher, right? And that dog is so German, so it measures its own, they have a gigantic garbage pail of food, and the dog only eats exactly what, to the gram it's supposed to have. Well, Duke's so wound up that I've shown up that it's running around. So I know what this dog is capable of, so I kind of put the dog out in the garage, right? And that's where the garbage can of food is. And the Doberman's on the inside being, just being, it, right? So we go after the show, and we have dinner, and then time comes for Tony, the spotlight goes on, and he's sitting out there, goes to play it, and it's like, bling, bong, it's like totally out of tune, and he's totally freaked out and totally upset, and he can't get in the groove, and so he just kind of, we got to go. So we go, okay. And so I'm exhausted. I just want to lie down with my sweetie. I haven't seen her in like a month and a half. And I haven't really had any sex because, and Neil, all during dinner, tells story after story after story of our adventures in building this nightclub and hanging with the mobsters with all the titty bar, uh, uh, you know, girls and every other girl in the nightclub. And he goes, and Donna, you can't believe this guy. He loves you so much. He didn't even look at a girl. And I said, yeah, because I couldn't, of course. But, because all he was at his table going after all those pads and pads and pads of circuit diagrams. And that's all he did for a month and a half. And that's why he's here alive and with a big bag of cabbage and being the dude. He is the dude. You were so lucky, Donna. You have him as your dude. He loves you so much, and that's all he could. He just went on and on the whole time. He's fingering Yvonne under the table, and you have to picture this. That Yvonne's boyfriend was a dark-skinned guy that was an albino, not just a black guy, but he's from the Philippines. So he had like Indian and Spanish, and because Philippines got everybody conquered the Philippines, right? He had every kind of nationality in him, and he was an albino. This guy had issues. So, um, and he was perfect as a flamenco guitarist, but he just failed at this gig. So, anyway, so he's like all upset and right. So we just go home again. I take another shower with Donna, and we get amorous and frisky, and she's made a nice little separate bedroom just for her, but it's like not really. But I mean, it's a little nook, but it's got a nice bed and it's got a little curtain, and we don't have a door really. Anyway, so we're just snuggling, and I hear and I'm just going, I don't even know what that is. And so as the evening goes deeper and deeper into morning, um, the smell starts to go, And I still don't want to get up. I don't want to deal with it. I just don't want to deal with it. And this house was very California, very Spanish, had a lot of wrought iron. And so, I'm almost asleep. I have my sweetie in my arms, and we're like curled up like two cats. And Neil is snoring on the couch like a chainsaw. And then all I hear this door open upstairs. A light goes on. I can see the shadow into the living room between the curtains, and I hear this, oh, whee, like swoosh, thump, and then a scream, and then a terrifying scream, and then a blood curdling scream. And I go, well, I got to get up for this. So I get up and put my kimono on, and Donna, she gets dressed. She just throws a pair of jeans on and a shirt and her shoes, and I kind of go out there in my wooden Japanese shoes. And Neil is still, snoring like a chainsaw. And Yvonne is like, oh my God. And she's up there in almost nothing. And I look up, and Tony, he looks like a Dalmatian, right? Because what had happened was that my dog, Duke of Delight, went upstairs and she had eaten the whole 55-gallon drum of dog food. And she had evacuated it all out in a chocolate milkshake thick diarrhea along the whole upstairs hallway. And Tony came out of their bedroom to use the toilet, and he flicked on the lights and didn't, the floor was dark brown wood, and the diarrhea didn't look that much different. He didn't, I could smell it downstairs, but he smashed into it and then flew down the hallway and ended up one leg in this wrought iron balcony thing, and he broke his knee, his hip, his wrist, and he was covered in doggy diarrhea. And he looked like a Dalmatian since he was albino. He had all these brown splotches all over him. And we couldn't get up the steps. So Yvonne from up there called on her princess phone in the bedroom, 911, and the fire, said, my boyfriend just had a terrible accident and he needs the fire department to get him out. And so they came in and looked at it and said, we're not touching that guy. So they brought in a fire hose and washed the whole thing down. These guys were like surgeons. They washed all the diarrhea all the way down the steps, all the way out the front door. So we didn't have to deal with it. It was like, and then they kind of swished it all over. And then they went and took care of Tony, and they hosed him down, and he was in there. And this is the fire hose. So he was pushed around. He's got all these broken bones, and he was screaming and yelling. And anyway, they took him out, put him on a gurney, took him to the hospital, and Yvonne didn't even go. As soon as they left, she lit a bunch of candles, went up and got his boo, and we smoked it all, for 2 days, and drank coffee and went to the movies. We never saw Tony. I said, don't do that. No, I'm done with him. Because she now had Neil. So we spent 2 weeks and then put Neil on the airplane, right? And so Don and I, we had loads of fun, right? But she had this really nerdish boyfriend who, one of the other reasons she left San Francisco was this jerk. And he had her car and her stuff, and she wanted to get it. And she kept calling him before Neil left. And so Neil would make he would go to the bar and, take my money and buy everyone a drink. And so he got into knowing these, again, he has this thuggish persona, a sweet, boyish thuggish persona. And so he got to know some pretty rough dudes. And we'd all play pool. And I taught Donna how to play pool. I was a pretty good pool player in those days. And so we'd play, and these guys liked Donna, and they liked the fact that it was her boyfriend that was sweet on her and liked them. Didn't have any ego about it, and they were like older brothers. And Neil was the this one guy, he was Australian too. He called him a cheeky monkey. And so we had this very interesting little crew, and this one day, and we drank a lot, and we were staying at Yvonne's, but see, Yvonne's house Tony owned. So there came a point where, even though we never saw Tony again, the marshal came and threw us out of Tony's house. Anyway, but by that time we had met these big burly guys, and we were having parties there. We had totally trashed that place. And then we stayed with the thuggish guy. So anyway, Donna was complaining because she kept calling this guy her nebbish boyfriend. And so we went and with the burly guys went and got her stuff. And I twisted that guy up a good deal. And so we were playing back to Australia. Yvonne went, she kind of got out of San Francisco because the vibe wasn't right. So she went down to see her mother in Southern California, and we drove her down there and stayed all the time with her. And then, but Donna wanted to be in San Francisco, so we went back up to San Francisco, and pretty much ran through my money. We stayed at the really super duper fancy hotel that Donna liked in the middle. It's a big fancy hotel of San Francisco, and anyway, so I knew that I was running out of money, and I knew she wanted to stay there. She was, I know everyone in New York, in San Francisco, like everyone in New York. I said, okay, you can be the dude. And what happened was everyone that she knew either died or moved on. So none of her connections, none of anything. So that made her even doubly depressed. And so she's super psychic, and she sensed that her father was dying. Before we went up to Europe, her father took me out to play golf with him. In February, we played on a state-owned golf course in Long Island that was kind of like, it was not a fancy rich man's golf course. It was like a golf course on a parking lot. I mean, there was no real grass. It was hard as a parking lot. And this guy was he should have been a professional golfer because he would hit these things and it would stick right there from the tee to the green and then one putt in. So he's going around doing this and he's carrying his own bag. And his bag only has like six clubs in it. And he's going on about, you're the one. I said, what do you mean I'm the one? You're the one who's going to marry my little princess. And I said, well, sir, really, we don't have to. It's not, I know, no, but I just see the way you treat her and how she loves you and how you love her and that you're a great teacher and you're the dude. And I said, well, and you're going off to Ireland, you're going to go visit her mother's family, and it's all going to be great. And you're going to take care of my little princess while I'm gone. I said, where are you going, sir? He goes, well, I'm not going to live forever. He knew he had issues, right? He knew he was going to die. He didn't tell no one. And so we went up to Europe, and then, we were in New York, and he would come and visit us in New York, not with his wife, not with his son. And we only went there twice, and I could see he was miserable because he was in this little box and his wife was his high school sweetheart who was really hot. And once they got married, she, had a few kids. She was like 300 pounds and sat on the couch and ate bonbons. And she had her own gig being a dental hygienist. That's where Donna learned how to do that. Anyway, so that's what he told me. And so Donna psychically knew something was wrong, but couldn't, she couldn't tell you exactly what was wrong. So she just felt, it just, and I could say, honey, what's wrong? How can I, and I spent all my money, and I had a lot from doing that job. I mean, I could have gone to some little island in the Caribbean and lived a few years on what I had, but I, spent lavishly for a couple months on her, Neil, and Yvonne until that party ended. And then, so I had to get a job. So, what do? I'm a really good electrician. But there I had none of my connections. So I would roll into, I'd wait and find a good electrician who needed me. And then they would just use me because they knew my predicament. And so after 3 or 4, I did this one job. I worked a week. And I worked on this guy, and I would go and I didn't do new work. I did, because I was good at fixing things, I would go on these calls, right? I had no idea where it was, and I'd only get paid once I showed up. They didn't start the clock rolling once I, got at the shop and then took the truck. All the time driving around San Francisco looking for the place, didn't get paid for them. Got there, a lady would sign what time I got there and what time I left, and that's all I got paid for. And I was really didn't like that guy. He was paying me like $7. Oh, you're really, I don't pay anybody $7 an hour. So, I'm used to getting $50 an hour, $100 an hour, not $7 an hour. And I'm giving him a 40-hour week, and he's only paying me for like 20 or 15 hours. So anyway, Friday, I get my check, and this phone call comes in, and I still have 15 minutes on the clock. And this lady goes, my lights are flickering. And you go, Al, why don't you go check this lady's lights, And he goes, here. And, so my paycheck was like $117. And he goes, if you go now, I'll give you $50 right here. So he gives me $50, right? So I, get in the truck, and I drive to this lady's place. And I take a look around. The first thing, I check the switches. I check the light bulbs. Just the things that normally, the easy things, before I start to getting into things that are a little more difficult. Then I go look at so where's your fuse box? So I don't know, what's that? So I go outside. I see where the entrance mast is, where the meter is, where the meter goes to, and down the basement there's that thing. And someone has put pennies in all of the screw plug fuses, right? So that means there is no fuse, right? and so this house could burn down. I mean, you know, however much electricity wants to flow through that wire, you know, it'll be as much that's coming from the transformer out on the pole, right? So, which is usually about 400 amps, right? Before that circuit breaker blows. So I'm looking at this stuff, and all the wire. This place was like wired in the 1920s, and all the wire is rubber coated canvas, what's called RHW, right? And not only is that, but it's tube and peg, so it's not in a pipe, it's not in a casing, it's just flowing through the walls on these insulators, right? And so I kind of take my hammer and just kind of start knocking things up so I can see where the wires are going down in the basement, because it's obvious no one's been in this basement in 20 years. So no one's going to care that I knocked some of the plaster out. And I look up there, and all of the cables are, they have no insulation whatsoever because they've just been cooked. All these years between the heat and that the fuse never blows and the toaster just keeps. Anyway, so I see that virtually everything goes up this one wall, goes into the attic, and then feeds down to everything. It doesn't come from, which is the stupidest way. Normally, since you got a basement, you just pop it up through the floor. Anyway, so I go, can I get? Oh yeah, they say through this little staircase in that closet, you can go up there. So I go up there. And I got my flashlight with it, and they got the blown-in insulation, and I'm going through it, and there are fried squirrels everywhere. Just dead squirrels up the kazoo, and I'm like going through it, and I put my hand here and my hand here, and they land on the conductors, and I'm sweating like a pig, and I get electrocuted. Normally if you get electrocuted between two fingers, not a big deal, but from one hand to the other, it's like going straight across your heart. It's like anyway, and there's unlimited current. So nothing, no fuse blows, and sparks are everything, and the squirrels start cooking, and I'm like flipping around in the attic like some cartoon character, and I come crashing through her living room ceiling, right? And leaving, it's like straight out of a cartoon. It's not like the whole thing comes down. It's like the outline, the cutout of my body through her living room. And does she go, "Are you all right?" No. She starts hitting me with a broom, that I've done that. "You're a terrible man. Look what you've done. How much?" And I just said, "Fuck you, bitch." And I get in the truck, and I drive, and I'm nice enough to drive the friggin' truck back to the shop where the guy's waiting for me. And the lady is called up, and he's livid, right? And he says, "Forget about your check." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Give me that $50." I said, "Good luck for that." And he basically, "Forget about cashing that check." So those are the kind of people I work for in San Francisco, and those are the kind of people who are still in San Francisco, and those are the kind of people who are like um, Leplowski, Madame Leplowski, or any of those other California politicians. So I'm there. So I say, screw this, and so I'm in this. I'm in what is known as the Marina area, where really, really rich people are, and I am fixing things for really rich people who have little businesses, and they're living on their yacht in the marina. So, I mean, they're paying me better than the electrician did, but not that much. And I'm having a hard time finding a place to live, right? And we're basically homeless, right? I'm living in the yachts in the marina, right? And because once you went through that gate, no one locked anything up, and all the rich guys I was going, like, "Oh, you can stay on Steve's boat. He's never there." And I said, "Do you know Steve?" "Oh yeah, I know Steve." "Can do I have permission?" "Oh, just go ahead." Right. And we got we're asleep, and we get woken up one time by the marshal. "What are you doing on this boat?" I said, "Well, the Marine chief said I could stay here." And so when they went and talked to him, he had to talk. They said, "Oh, I told him to stay in my boat over there." They got just confused. They're okay. So we didn't get arrested or anything, but it was not the most pleasant experience. So as I was doing that, I met this guy, Herbert Wong, right? And Herbert Wong was a realtor, right? And he had a hotel in Lake Tahoe. And he took us up there one weekend, and I fixed a bunch of things up there. And it's like Tahoe. And then he goes, "Oh, you do real good work. Listen, I have a few buildings you fix up. Then I make you manager of." And it was a nice hotel. I mean, if we got to be manager of a hotel in Lake Tahoe, I'd probably still be there. Anyway, so we start working for Herbert on buildings around downtown core of San Francisco. So the first place we fix up a house that was right across the street from the People's Temple. People who 900 people who off themselves by drinking the Kool-Aid that Jim Jones served up, right? And so when that happened, the bodies were left out in the equatorial forest of down there, and then the Air Force came and got them and put them on dry ice and flew them back to America to get the bodies, because all the families for People's Temple first started in San Francisco. Jim Jones was a pretty high flying evangelicalist, a political guy in San Francisco, and he was tied to Madame Polsky, and there's three other San Francisco ladies who are senators who are, I think, still there, who smell like off fish, right? So, and this, when we were there, they were just like aldermen and running for Congress and things of that nature. And so all those people who are now in our government were connected to the People's Temple. And the People's Temple had some really weird stuff going on with MK Ultra and the CIA, and that's kind of what that whole thing was about. It was some kind of mind control experiment. Anyway, so we're living right across the street, and when we started working on that place, about a day later, all of these Baskin Robbins ice cream trucks pulled up in our neighborhood, right along where the People's Temple were, like 20 of them, right? And this is when Jimmy Carter was president, and they whatchamacallit, these guys who call themselves FEMA set up roadblocks, right? And this was all happening when we first got there. And one early morning, I went to the hardware store to get some paint and plaster and the stuff we needed to fix this house up for. And Herbert had an account there, so he brought me there and said, "David, this guy, we can sign for anything he needs." Anyway, so I got all the stuff I kind of needed, and when I drove back, the roadblock was up, and these guys were like, "So do you have your birth certificate and your utility bill?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I'm in that house right there. How can you prove it? Do you have a mortgage?" Or I said, "Like, I would drive around with my birth certificate, and you have a driver's license?" "Yeah, I got a driver's license." And they go, "Oh, it's from out of state. How do we know this is valid?" Because they don't have computers in those sites. And I said, and Donna was hanging her head out the upstairs window screaming. And I said, "See that woman? That's my wife. Go talk to her," right? And she, they first went up to her, and she started screaming at them and jumping up and down, and she had called Herbert, and Herbert showed up with papers of that he owned the building, and between the three of us, we were making more noise than these guys even wanted to deal with. They couldn't push me around, or Donna, forget it. I mean, by this time, Donna had been with me for 4 years, and she had learned her powers. She made Obi-Wan Kenobi look like a child. Anyway, so she was like jumping up and down, and Herbert was like pushing them around, and I was just like, looking for a place to smoke a doobie. Anyway, so they gave us IDs, and it said FEMA, and you know, and with our address of where we lived. And anyway, so we were there. So we were there maybe 3 weeks. And what was in those Baskin Robbins trucks were bodies that they had frozen because they didn't have enough space in the morgue downtown because they had 900 bodies. So they, the mortuary guys and the morgue people would bring the families there to ID the bodies. And these bodies had blown up so big that they were like tuna. And it was San Francisco, so it was kind of a hill. So every time they opened up the back door of the Baskin Robbins truck, a frozen human being the size of a tuna would, slide out of the truck and click, 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 click down the hill. And sometimes, the way they piled them up in that thing, and 10, 20 of those bodies that were basically naked would fly out of the truck and go click, click, click. So for about 3 weeks, we just kept hearing, clunk, click, 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 click. And if you look out the window, you would see these frozen bodies flying, down the hill. So that was San Francisco in 1978, I guess, give or take. It was surreal. So then Herbert took us downtown, and we were right across the street in a it was an old office building that Herbert bought, and we were turning it into SROs, single room occupancies, and it was right across from City Hall. And so we had a really nice office corner, and we could see the whole down the street to where this little park was, and the City Hall was right there, and the police was over there, courthouse over here, right? And so we're there about a week, and all this ruckus comes up, right? And Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone were assassinated by Dan White. Now, Harvey Milk was a really, really good friend. One of the only friends that was left in San Francisco was Harvey Milk, because Harvey Milk owned a photo store, a professional photo store with, real cameras and chemicals and paper and all this stuff for a darkroom. And Donna, the first, when she was going to Cal Arts and the San Francisco Art Institute, and she wanted to build herself her own private darkroom, Harvey Milk gave her an account and let her take a whole bunch of, photo equipment on assignment, and she paid them off in photographs. She was that good. Harvey had really an amazing collection, and he was part of Magnum, so she kind of, got to know the Magnum boys, Gary Winograd and that crew. And so the only friend that was left, so when we moved down there, we used to go have lunch with, Harvey Milk, right? And then he gets assassinated by Dan White. And what had happened was San Francisco was run by this small group of very rich people called the Nob Hill gang, or Nob Hill folk. They were really rich folk, and old money. And they would play all the blacks against the Hispanics against the Italians against the Jews, and everyone hated the Chinese. And Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone went in, and so the Nob Hill, the really rich, conservative, Ronald Reagan kind of folk, CIA kind of people, basically won the politics in San Francisco for the last 120 years. So it's a great earthquake. So, or before, when the Spanish were there. So anyway, they did, the rich guys never thought that a gay guy and an Italian guy could get all these people together, right? And which they did, and they voted them out. And the only guy left was Dan White, who had been a policeman, and he got the working class white guy vote down in the not marina, but the Fisherman Wharf kind of neck of the woods. And so he was the last refuge of the power structure of the Nob Hill guys because they paid the money for the TV ads. Anyway, so he married one of the rich guy's daughters, right? So he had hypoglycemia. So the rich guy said, okay, because they wanted to build this big convention center in the middle of town, which is where the Italian they were going to wipe out the whole Italian neighborhood and put this convention center. And that was the issue because we're not going to just want the Italians, but little chunks of everybody else's part of their ghetto. And so just like it was on the same realm of Robert Moses and urban renewal. So, they basically had Dan White come in and assassinate both those guys. Now, Dan White had, like I said, hypoglycemia. So a doctor took his blood, and then Dan White proceeded to eat 112 Twinkies. And then they waited about 20 minutes, and then took his blood again and put it in the fridge, right? Then Dan drove down to City Hall. He had his police revolver, and he went in, had an argument with the mayor, and emptied his police revolver into the mayor, right? Now, that would have been, not murder, but, an angry homicide. What do they call it? Starts with an M. And so he had to go back to his car and reload his gun, and then he went into Harvey Milk's. While everyone's running around screaming, he went and shot Harvey Milk. Now that is, murder number one, because he had to think about loading the gun. The other one he could get off on being pissed off, but not that. So he went to court, and they had the quickest trial almost on history because he got off for being temporarily insane because he had hypoglycemia and he ate 112 Twinkies, and they had his blood, and he had the doctor who did it was, the city guy, who did, he was the guy who checked the dead people out, right? And so he was, really always in court giving testimony on dead people. So he got Dan White off, right? And so we're right across the street. So this happens, and everyone's down in front of the city hall crying, and candles, and every night there's vigils, and Donna's down there crying because she, Harvey Milk was her good buddy, and she's taking pictures of it, and so I would go in and listen to the court thing, right? And because Herbert actually said, you make sure, because I want to know what's politically going to go on, right? So I would go, I do my work, but I'd go down and go into court, and got to know the court guys pretty good, so I could always get a seat. And I kind of twigged that this was already set up, and the way the community was, like the war drums were beating, because they had taken over San Francisco. They had, San Francisco would have been a different place than it is today if Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone were still there. I mean, first of all, they wouldn't have had the convention center because they went, as soon as he was dead, those guys on the ground, they broke the ground for the municipal convention center, and they named it after Mayor Moscone. That's why it's the Moscone Center, right? Which is like a slap in the face because he didn't want that thing, So I knew it wasn't going to be good. And the way I saw in the court was that this guy was going to get off. And they were like riding this thing, it was just a matter of weeks. Most, hearings like, look, OJ, it took like years to get that thing through court. Anyway, so I said, honey, when I said, they're going to, make the verdict soon, and so we should go upstairs and make dinner and just watch it from upstairs, right? So we're like on the sixth floor of this building, window right out on that whole area. It was like watching it. We were like in the Coliseum, and you know, we looked down there, and it was unbelievable because soon as it, around 6 o'clock, they had basically closed the courtroom, kicked everyone out, and had the jury come in and give a thing. So um, it was a good 40 minutes before the word got out onto the street that Dan White had gotten off on his temporary insanity charge. But by then, they had gotten him out. He went up the basement, went in a car. He was already out of town. So they weren't going to string him up. But the gay guys and everybody else went nuts. And, they had a tremendous riot, throwing, everything, turning cars over, setting them on fire, throwing garbage cans through all the rich restaurants downtown. And then they marched around the corner to where the police department and would set the police department on fire. And the cops came out there with guns and they were shooting tear gas, point blank at these guys. And, the shell would shoot out like a shotgun shell, hit this gay guy whose adrenaline was going so hard. And they would, it would bounce off and the gay guy, and, I don't know how many cops, when I saw the gay guys pick up the spurting tear gas canister and shove it down the throats of the police, right? And in other orifices too. And they beat the cops. They took their guns away from them, and they didn't shoot any cops dead. But I saw them, take shotguns, to their kneecaps, and other bodily parts too. So no cop died, but boy, hundreds were messed up and were never the same. And they burnt the police department. Then they went around to where the couple blocks down, where the municipal parking lot, where the police cars and police vehicles and city vehicles were, and they set down on fire. I mean, they did like $20 million worth of damage. It was 1978, whenever it was, and we're watching it from up above, and I just got this, and Donna, because she was like triple cancer. Her grandmother was a crone. I mean, she had what they call the knack. And every so often, she would just, the waves would hit her. And this was one of them. She was like, but she was picking up all of this psychic energy from everybody. And that's the fact that someone was pushing buttons. Those guys the gay guys and everybody else, the Italians, the Japanese, everybody who was part of that coalition went nuts because their two heroes were assassinated. And it got just a little bit of coverage. I mean, it wasn't in the newspapers there on the TV cameras. Everybody was out there, but it wasn't on TV. They didn't make a big deal that there was like a revolution there. And they, cops didn't shoot them. Pretty much nobody went to jail because it was such a cluster frack that, let's just sweep it under the rug and forget about it. But from that point on, San Francisco was not the same. And neither was America. Just like when JFK got whacked, they kind of swept that under the carpet. And pretty much every craziness that we're seeing going on today can be traced back to events like this. There are a number of them. 9/11 is one of them. Vietnam, Ronald Reagan, Iran-Contra. Just go, the two guys go read Howard Zinn and Chris Hedges. Chris is really good. He's written a lot of amazing books. Anyway, so I've been, 2 hours and 9 minutes. And my throat. I've been talking a long time. So let's see what you guys have been saying. Oh, hello there, you. Let's see. Let's go up a little bit and come down. Jade says hi. Lego, those toys. 8 movies, roughly 16 hours of viewing. Mm-hmm. Pleasure. Okay, let's see. So, Carrot Top. No. Yeah, predictive programming. Yep. Avoid mainstream. Yep. Heavenly Coffee by JFK. Yeah, I had that. My mom and I watched the commercial of the coffee thing, and it had a pendulum that was, hypnotizing the whole American public. Let's see. Simpsons, Mr. Druthers. Yep. Yeah, the Simpsons are another, MK Ultra thing. Matt Grez, or Matt, whatever his name is. Kravitz, yep, discusses. Yep. Email me. Jane, email me, Jane. Please. Remember, everyone, the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Well, everything's Agenda 21, pretty much. Build immunity. And the best thing to build immunity is meditation. Mm-hmm. Hey, buddy. What's up, Bob? Hey, buddy. Hello there, you. Yep, Jenny Pooh. Well, what if the virus is DNA targeting? Well, like I said, it's an RNA strand. Just take a bath in hand sanitizers. Yep. You don't have to go that far. I meant targeting certain genotypes. Yes, and I think so too. But pretty much we will see by mid-March, mid-April, meaning by mid-March to mid-April, that this virus basically, because by that time that's spring is coming, right? And if it, acts like a regular flu thing, flu kind of dissipates once it gets warm. And so, and that people are out in the sun getting vitamin D. I sat today in the sun for a good half hour. It was really sweet. Took off my shirt, exposed my nipples, and in Long Island, I used to live near a beach off the Atlantic, near Mauritius. Mauritius were on one side of the Great South Bay, and the Hamptons were over here. And there's this beautiful little beach that you get on one road. Not many people knew about it. And if you went all the way over to the poor people part, or the richest part, the county and police and everybody let you be naked and let you stay there and let you camp and as long as you didn't make a muss or a fuss or get anyone's attention, you go there being naked all you wanted. It was very nice. And it was really nice because you kind of had to know where it was, and you couldn't drive there. You kind of had to walk in. And so most of the pervs wouldn't go there. But I lived my house was just like right there. So I didn't have to drive up to where the road was and then walk in a couple of miles. Right out of my backyard. And it depends on when the water was in, tide was in, it was about 6 feet. You had to swim there. Tide was out, you could walk. and someone had built a very nice stone path in the mud. So when it was low tide, it was like a very nice muddy, but stone, you wouldn't sink in. So my then girlfriend really loved that place. So we would go there, and my dog too loved it. So we'd go there, and we'd walk out of our house naked and walk, across, either swim across the Great South Bay or walk on that path and, have a good time. I'd bring an umbrella so we wouldn't get burned. It was really nice. Being naked is very nice. Yep, B12, B6, it's what I've been chewing on. Let's see, Jane, give me the Purell will make one of the pinchons for infections. You should, I don't use Purell. I do use a hand sanitizer, but I also add the super duper alcohol to it. Let's see. Truly disturbed. Yep. Well, this is one of my truly disturbed short stories. And remember, don't believe a word I say. Check it out. Google it. If you went and watched this over again and picked out the little historical points, and that's what I love. When I tell stories like this, and Rich, when I was in universities and I would just go on about things, these professors who, I'm a tenured professor, I know everything, I'm smart. He's like a stable genius, just like Carrot Pinhead. And, Carrot Pinhead is a stable genius. I mean, his story is a lot deeper than the media's playing. So, but those guys would always go, and there was this one guy who really thought he was smart, really thought he was exceptional, right? And it was all his doing. It wasn't the fact that his parents put him through college, He was a black guy who hated black people, It was really amazing. I got to be a doctor. I was a surgeon, And why can't they work hard like I did? Well, you went to a special prep school because your parents were teachers. I mean, they got to know the right people, and you were a smart kid, and they pushed you through that. I mean, you were never getting through anything other than public school, but you went to an elite Virginia, and you were so white that the white people weren't bothered by the fact you were black. And so just because you drive a Lexus and live in a rich person's condo doesn't mean you're the smartest person in the universe, right? And so, but he would, we became relatively good friends because I never held a grudge on this guy because I would tell stories saying, no, you're lying. You're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about. I said, oh, go Google it. And he would. And we go, my God, you're right. Right. And for a good straight year of this university I was at, he just would say, you're lying. You're stupid. You're driving me crazy. And must be 1,000 times he would Google it. And so after a certain point, he just gave up. And then when other people say, oh, you're lying, he goes, no, don't even go there. Al says that it's true. And I said, no, what are you talking about? Don't believe a word I say. So anyway, 2 hours and 18 minutes and 50 seconds. So I'm about toast. And Buddy ended the chatting with truly disturbed. If you're not disturbed, you're not doing the right job. If you're not disturbing, right? Like there's this one IHOP I hang out, and one of the managers, whenever I'm there, and I'm talking to people and getting them enthralled about what I'm saying, she goes, he's causing trouble again. And she says it in a joking way, but Freud said that that's the most caustic relationship, a joking relationship. So anyway, kids, I'm glad the gods of is it snowing? No, it's snowing. Look at that. So the gods of the internet allowed me to put this show down, and I'm glad. And so, but I'm going to leave right now. I'm going to just suck on some more vitamin C, take a look at a few things, and then go to sleep. Enjoy the night. Okay, gang. I love you. Stay well. Remember, in every day and every way, take the piece of the earth and make it stronger. And Father and Mother, Father Sky, Mother Earth, Father, bring the prana into our hearts. Mother, ground that love in our chi. And in every day and every way, let us take the piece of the earth and make it stronger. Aho. And Father, Mother, bless us indeed. Increase our territory. Put your hand on our shoulder and keep us from evil, so we will do no harm. So we may, in every day and every way, take love's co-creation and make it stronger. Love you guys.